Harry Latham-Coyle with The Independent. Thank you for joining me on the Rugby Bunker for this recap of an astonishing day at Allianz Stadium. We have just walked past, and I'm not making this up, a shredded rose beneath one of the seats. And actually, Harry, that feels perfectly apt for what happened today. It's just an astonishing win for Ireland.
Yeah, and probably a result none of us saw coming. I think anyone projecting this game would have said it would be a real arm wrestle, deciding the last 20, and it just wasn't. So good, England were so bad, and I think it raises some pretty serious questions about where England are at, and equally, I think a lot of questions around Ireland have been answered with the way their old guard play and the way a couple of newer faces came through.
Yeah, the rain actually as well, really adding to the mood around England after that. Listen, Harry, let's start with our top three players from England against Ireland. In at number 3, and I should add that this is a pretty elite top 3. It's an all-Irish top 3. But we're going to start with an honorary mention because you suggested this for Joe Hayes. I was doing player ratings for the Standard. Joe Hayes was the only player to score. I think I gave him a 6. I don't think anybody else even got a 5. Marcus Smith on the bench. Hayes, a lovely kind of little slip catch of a Gibson partnership.
He was a goalkeeper in his youth.
He was, and you could see that skill set. Very, very useful around the park. How, if you told me at the start of 2025 that England's most important player or their best player in the first 3 rounds of the 2026 Six Nations had been Joe Hayes, there's no way I would have believed you. But yeah, you're right. He was very good. Anything else on Hayes?
Just to say, it was quite fitting that Hayes has an Irish mother, so even England's best player today probably could have played for Ireland instead.
Well, so could I. There's someone with an Irish mother as well. Shout out, Mum, if you're watching. Harry, our top 3 players. Number 3, Stuart McCluskey, having an incredible Six Nations tournament at the ripe old age of 33, truly aging like a fine wine. The way he overpowered England's midfield, I think, really stood out for me. It was his break that ended up with the Balogun try in the corner, just fending off Ollie Lawrence and going through him so easily. He also absolutely whacked Lawrence back in one tackle, I think, in the second half. He set, when I was analysing England, he set the tone physically for Ireland, and that's what England don't have. They don't have a physical tone setter in midfield at the moment, and yeah, he's just having a phenomenal championship.
Yeah, it was a totemic performance in so many ways. I mean, it felt like so often he managed to get through the initial contact, get his arms free, and even if he wasn't offloading, he was drawing more English bodies into the breakdown, which then opened space out wide, which we saw Robert Balogun and Tommy O'Brien really exploit. It's lovely to see, really, him have this Indian summer to his career after so many years trapped behind Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw. He's having a storming tournament.
Harry, number 2. It's Robert Balogun. He's had to wait a long time for his opportunity in the Ireland shirt, but he was very good last week against Italy, finishing off that sweeping attacking move that Ireland had. Here today, burst around Henry Arundel for one break and then passed inside for one attack. Absolutely brilliant down this side here, sort of taking advantage of a bit of indecision by, I think it was Fraser Dingwall, picking off that to a gap for Tommy O'Brien's try. Balogun was brilliant, wasn't he?
Yeah, defensively outstanding as well. He corralled Arundel several times, or Arundel tried to go round him, which just showed the sheer pace that Balogun has. And a lot of people before this tournament were saying, well, Ireland need that injection of pace, that dynamism, a little bit of X factor on the edge. And I thought today we saw that from Tommy O'Brien and Balogun particularly. It was a really assured international performance.
It's not going to be an all-Ulster top 3, but it reflects actually how well they are going in the URC. Number 1, Harry, feels pretty easy. It's Jamison Gibson Park. One of those days where if you were starting to wonder if Gibson Park was maybe showing his age a little bit and, some kind of doubts creeping into his game, such an authoritative, commanding performance here. The quick thinking for his try, when England were napping after I think it was Tom Curry went in the side of a breakdown, just razor sharp, showed the exact kind of clinical finishing ability down that end England simply did not have when they were attacking up that end.
Yeah, Eddie Jones has a favourite phrase around scrum halves. He likes a zip man, and when I think of Jamison Gibson Park, he is the ultimate zip man. The way he gets the breakdown, clears it away, his speed of release from the breakdown. You can tell he was schooled in New Zealand, where Aaron Smith was the archetype.
Yeah.
And there's so much intelligence about the way he plays, the way he manipulates sort of tight defenders, manipulates the guards and bodyguards, and puts other people through gaps. And then his try was beautifully taken and a really sharp bit of thinking that summed up the Irish performance.
Harry, those are our top 3 players from England against Ireland. Okay, Harry, our top 5 moments from England against Ireland. Now, the beauty here is that I've written these down on my phone and you do not have these to hand. So I will announce them and you get to react to them live. Fantastic.
Excellent.
Number 5, Steve Borthwick making 3 first-half substitutions, one enforced with Alex Mitchell coming off for Jack Van Portfleet. I think Borthwick said in the press conference that it was a soft tissue issue for Mitchell, which is a bit of a concern. I think his the likelihood of him facing Italy and Rome in a couple of weeks is probably therefore in doubt. Borthwick purposefully hooking Luke Cowan-Dickie made a lot of sense because England's line-out was a bit of a shambles. Cowan-Dickie, after his tackle attempt against Scotland, where people were looking at him and thinking it's a bit dodgy, he had two in his 25 minutes on the field that were exactly the same. Had to come off because the line-out was going awry. But the Freddie Stewart one is interesting. I have the minutes and the seconds of when Freddie Stewart came back on and then came back off. Would you like to know what they were?
Yeah, I'd be delighted.
So Freddie Stewart gets yellow carded for playing Gibson Park at the base of a ruck before the Balakoon try. Fair enough, it's a clear yellow card. He comes back on 37:43, and then on 39:38, England take him off again and replace him with Marcus Smith. Harry, what happened?
It's a bit of a baffler, isn't it? Why bring him back on if you're... Because you don't just make a change. Steve Borthwick isn't a reactionary man. He would have surely been plotting that change for a little while beforehand. So it makes you wonder why he felt he could bring Stewart back on. Yeah, I thought Marcus Smith went well today. I'd actually be a little bit surprised if he doesn't start in Italy. And then the Cowan-Dickie one it was actually a little bit sad to see Cowan-Dickie perform like that, because it was sort of, when we think of the worst of Cowan-Dickie, that it was that sort of performance, low chop tackles that weren't probably legal. And then his line out just didn't look right today. And England weren't really trusting him to throw line outs. They were throwing balls to the front. They were throwing balls to Alex Mitchell at the front, which may not have gone 5 meters. It's pretty tough to see a hooker in that situation.
Made worse by the continual cuts in the second half to Cowan-Dickie on the big screen, just looking really sad, sat on the bench. Harry, number 4, the 2 George Ford missed penalties to touch in the first half, because this was a period where, feels like an absolute lifetime ago, England did actually start quite well. We're building quite well in that Irish 22. The scrum was on top early. Ford just gets one wrong completely and misses touch, and then another time seems to kind of aggressively be trying to get it into the corner and just pushes it dead. So uncharacteristic from a player of his quality and experience, but also just completely unacceptable mistakes. And it killed England's momentum in those early stages, along with the attacks that broke down.
Yeah, you're right. I thought England were pretty good in attack in the first 15 minutes, which sounds a really weird thing to say when they ended up, 17-0 down pretty quickly. But they were throwing some really funky shapes at Ireland. They were getting a lot of collision dominance. And you're right, Ford is your banker. Those kicks he never misses. The second one looked very close. Ford suggested afterwards to us that he felt it might have crept the right side of the corner post for him. But
have you just broken an embargo on the YouTube episode?
People will be angry at me.
Ignore this.
Yeah, forget about that until 6 p.m. tomorrow.
Yes, you didn't hear this until 6 p.m. on Sunday.
But you're right, it did sort of sum up England's performance. And that's 2 weeks in a row that Ford, old reliable, England's most consistent performer, the guy who really had seized that 10 shirt, has had just sort of moments you wouldn't expect from him, with the drop goal last week and those 2 missed line kicks today.
Really, really bizarre. Harry, number 3, because I want to make sure that it gets referenced. Andrea Piardi, poor Andrea Piardi, the referee, chasing after one of the many Irish breaks to the end of the first half. Yeah, it must have been, and just pulled up lame. Said something. It's like, I assume it's always a hamstring in that situation. The beauty of the ref mic is that we can sort of hear a little bit of the dialogue.
What was his line? Was it "My body is done"?
He was like, my body's done. No, or he was lying on the floor and he said something like, "I'm bad, guys. I'm bad." Like, it was very, very sad to see.
It was, and credit to Pierre Brousset for stepping in. It's not easy, as someone who's refereed a little bit in the past, to be preparing to AR and then step into referee. Also, Craig Maxwell-Keys with what must be a rare outing for an Englishman as an official in an England Test match. Best wishes to Andrea Piardi. I think he's had a good year as a ref. Of course, we'll all remember the end of that Lions Australia game at the MCG, the second test. He handled that well in some challenging circumstances. Let's hope it's not a serious issue, but yeah, a strange moment. The only one I can remember like it was, do you remember Jaco Piper, 2023 World Cup quarterfinal in Marseille, Wales, Argentina? Yeah. That's the only other one I can recall.
Are you saying that Maxwell Keys swung it Ireland's way, and that was the difference in this otherwise very tight game?
Listen, I would never cast aspersions on any official, actually.
I mean, you're right about Brousset being right in the firing line, because he had that moment where Tom Curry was left in a horrible, awkward body position, and actually the crowd were obviously baying for a decision to go England's way, but there was real clarity that we could hear on the refereeing between TMO and officials down on the field, just to sort of ascertain whether actually it was sort of an instantaneous action or whether it was foul play. But they got to a conclusion there. Harry, number 2, as I check what number 2 is, because with the beauty of editing, I can do that. Number two is a tricky one, Harry. I've sort of gone with McCluskey brushing up Ollie Lawrence for that line break, and then the speed of ruck ball that Ireland had, the way Gibson Park then put Balakoon over for the try. It was so slick and precise, and it was everything that England aren't. England spent long passages in Allianz 22, just kind of clunkily going from phase to phase, doing what they could to try and find an opening. Ireland just so sharp on the counter attack, and yeah, I think you could easily pick up the Ballykean breakdown here as well for the Tommy O'Brien try, but that was pretty good as well.
Yeah, it just felt like Ireland were able to cut England at will today, both in those wider channels, which is becoming a persistent flaw for England, but also their midfield defence, I think, has been pretty strong, and they haven't lost that physical battle too often. But there were a couple of times today where it just, like McCloskey getting away from Lawrence was one, and then Caelan Doris's break right at the start of the second half when you thought, right, England are up against it here. They need to come out and be really accurate and intense. And I think there was a tackle attempt from Ellis Genge that just, frankly, I didn't look good enough.
That would be a bonus moment. It was the combination of a kick going up from Crowley, which was won back, I think, by Osborne. I can't remember, where England had absolutely no challenge to the high ball, followed immediately by Ireland going one out. Genge with the dollop of Ollie Chesham in there as well, just completely gaffing in defence. That summed up the difference between the two teams, I thought, really well.
Yeah, and you're right to spotlight McCloskey again. I thought he was both a moments man today. He came up with some huge moments. The tracking back on Marcus Smith being another, but also just a really well-rounded performance that England's just didn't seem able to handle him.
Which leaves us with number one, it's that man, Gibson Park, the sharp try in the first half. England, having been bogged down in that Irish 22, unable to set their chances. Gibson Park coming down here with the quick tap penalty. One of those where it's an absolute body blow for a team like England, where you've been counter-attacking, you've been attacking with such purpose and trying to find a way through, but just unable to do it. And then a team goes down the other end and just punches you in the mouth, really, with a try like that. Gibson Park one, absolutely crucial for giving Ireland that momentum early on. And then before you knew it, they were up 22-0 and the game was basically dead.
Yeah, and they went from inside their own half. They got to their right edge, England's left edge, far too easily. Arundel was burned on the outside, and then the midfield just didn't stay with the tracking Irish players. And that meant the bust was made. Ireland go back to the left. England haven't reformed properly, but they actually do a really good job, and they populated that breakdown quite well. And I think when Tom Curry watches that back on review, he'll be furious with himself, because I think there was another Jackler there. He had time actually to sweep his legs around and not concede that penalty. I get why he's going into contest, trying to stem the flow, but then a really, really sharp bit of thinking from Gibson Park.
Such a blatant infringement. It reminded me a bit of, was it Ollie Chesham had one like that last week in the Scotland game, and like Joe McCarthy's in Paris against France in the opening game, just like needless breakdown penalties, which create momentum. Those are our top 5 moments from England against Ireland. Right, Harry Latham-Coyle of The Independent. Any final thoughts? England, the last 2 weeks for England have just been so damaging, and it's 2 weeks in a row where they've had terrible starts, but for different reasons. Because actually, the first contestable kick this week that went up, they won it back through Freddie Stewart, and I thought, wow, what a change from last week, where it took them 38 minutes to win back a contestable kick. I am fascinated to see how they go to Rome and what changes they make. In one of the sections previously mentioned, Marcus Smith at fullback. I think he's got a very good chance to start, but I also wonder about George Furbank, who is now fit and available, it sounds like. I wonder whether England actually wanted Furbank this week, but felt that adding him and Lawrence might be too. Charlie mentioned that. Actually, maybe now is an argument for one of Marcus Smith or Furbank to start.
Yeah, I think anyone who's read what I've written in the Independent this week since the Scotland game, I was prepared a bit to accept that as an aberration, because it felt so atypical to the England team we'd seen on that 12-match winning run. It just felt like a lot went against them, a lot of lucky bounces didn't fall their way. Part of that's just rugby and just a sport. I think after this, you have to ask some deeper questions. You have to think a little bit more deeply about where they're at, what they're trying to do, and personnel. And I thought I can really understand why Steve Borthwick backs the side to go again with relatively minimal changes. I think now is probably, their title chances are gone, aren't there? So you're now in a position of, right.
I'd argue they went last week.
Well, yeah, quite likely, but you're maybe thinking, can we build momentum again and get to Paris? And we know they're quite good at devising a tactical plan and implementing it for specific games. So maybe there is a case that they could have beaten. I think that's gone now. Now it's all about, right, how do we become the best team we can be for this final 2-week block? 2 really tough trips. Italy and Rome is going to be a tough test, isn't it? And then France on the final night, on the evidence of that, is a little bit worrying. So yeah. I think we will see changes. I think the back line will be will certainly be freshened up. Fullback, you're right. I keep forgetting about George Furbank, partly because he's not had much rugby.
Well, the problem with Burbank, a bit like you have with Lawrence today, is that you're now asking him to come back and sort of revive the team from the attacking standpoint. But you saw it today with Ollie Lawrence. Like, Ollie Lawrence was noticeably rusty, even though I thought Lawrence had some good moments. The rusty moments, the moments where he was outmatched physically, outweighed that. And now you're asking Burbank to come in and make an instant impact. That's concerning. One thing I kept thinking about two things while I was writing my sort of report for the Observer. The first thing was that Ben Elroy, after we had the Wales result, where he tried to put a lid on England's 12 test winning run, and instead we're about to have 4-5 weeks, like the hardest kind of spell we've had for a very long time. It is proving to be that way. I think England are finding out a lot about themselves. I wonder if there was a small sense of hubris after that winning run within the players. I imagine that's been dashed now. And the other thing I keep thinking about is Steve Walker, over this past season period, has told us willingly and repeatedly that, look, I don't have a very large pack here. It's a team of athletes. It's a team built with speed. But actually, I think England needs to find some power. I think they need to find some power in their pack, probably by starting a bigger six, whether it's Alex Bowles at 6 or tweaking something there, because they seem too light around the breakdown. Also in midfield, more backline disruption. I would strongly consider starting Seth Atkinson at Gloucester in Rome and in Paris. You also think England have a bit of a power issue? It sort of felt that way today.
I do, yeah. And the construction of the back five is interesting because I don't think Maro Itoje is at full sharpness. I think he would probably admit that. That's the second week in a row he's come off early. They just aren't producing loads of power carriers at the moment. It will be interesting to see if Chandler Cunningham South comes back in, or there's really not that many options. And Mika Ilioni isn't in the squad. I know he's someone that Steve Borthwick rates hugely. Put another question on you. Are you changing by half?
Maybe it's a reflection on me. I'm probably quite loyal to Ford, maybe to a fault. Don't understand what that was today. What I more have a problem with England's general attacking approach, where when they were going through they went through a lot of phases from various rewards. You'll see that you'll see that Ben had 20 carries again today. But I'd love to know how many meters he actually gained per carry. England are constantly feeding him flat balls with no depth. I'd see that whole attacking shape as well.
I'd be very tempted to, because I think England want to give Finn Smith time at fly half, and they wanted to do that in Edinburgh, and they weren't able to because he had to come on at inside centre and reshuffle everything.
I would just say is that I don't think they would change for knowing that Mitchell is going to be out.
True, yeah, I think that's so
changing both of your halfbacks might be an issue.
But we'll see. I mean, they've got 2 weeks to think about it. I would also consider moving Tommy Freeman back to 13, which may sound odd given they've just moved him back to the wing. But I thought today actually shows where he has been good in this first 2 weeks, where he did have a bit more of that front door punch. You think of the carries against Wales where he was getting over the gain line, and also his connection with his wings. I know Scotland got a bit of joy on the edge last week, but that was more, I think, to do with Arundel being off. I thought today there was a real dislocation between Ollie Lawrence in that 13 channel, which has probably always been the drawback, where Lawrence doesn't naturally defend at 13, and he's quite often defended at inside centre for England with someone like Henry Slade at 13, or Fraser Dingwall was pushed out, and it just felt like that didn't work. Maybe there were a few too many moving pieces, but with 2 weeks to rest, recharge, tool, and go again, maybe they'll be in better shape, and maybe we'll all see Freeman back at 13 in Rome.
And look, from an Irish perspective, apart from that aberration of the start in Paris where they were 29-0 down, this was the best they've looked for a long time. They've sort of been able to overcome the tip in personnel scrum to give away these scrum penalties. Everything else has been so sharp. I thought, Harry, any more final thoughts?
I'd let you go. I'd just like to say it was quite heartening to see Ireland like that again. I thought that was a sensational performance, one they haven't produced for a long time. And it reminds you what a great team they are and what a good team they are to watch a lot of the time, which hasn't been true of them maybe in the last 12 months or so, with obviously the Lions wiping out last summer and taking away a load of their staff and players. Yeah, they were very deserved winners today. But, the beauty of this competition is Scotland looked irresistible against England last week and very nearly contrived to lose in Cardiff today. We never know what might happen next. Italy, France tomorrow. I mean, we're all just assuming France go to Paris on the final weekend chasing a Grand Slam. But this competition has proved us wrong so many times.
That's our recap. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.